Welcome to another episode of Off Script with Rip. I'm your host, Ryan Ripken, and this is a podcast where I bring on guests from a variety of different industries to talk about their story. And regardless of the path they've chosen to take, I promise you, listen to the words. There's a lot that you can relate and resonate with. But for some reason, if there isn't, there's always some great stories. And who doesn't love a great story? This week's guest is current NFL free agent Colin Thompson. And Colin actually has spent the last few years prior with the Carolina Panthers, and he just has a great story. He really was one of the top recruits coming out of high school and had to deal with a lot of adversity then to try to make it to the NFL and live out his dream. And Colin just in general just has so many great teaching points, great advice, and thoughts about even mental training, which that we'll get into more in the episode. And I could relate a little bit with Colin even more that we're both going into the media world. He's doing it while he's still playing. Mine's with my career over. But Colin has his own media company, Not For Long Media, which is putting out a ton of content and has a variety of different podcasts for you all to listen to. So I'm going to stop there. But before we start the interview, I would love if you guys could please like and subscribe to the Off Script with Rip podcast. That would be tremendous. And as always, leave a review. It helps me make this whole experience better. So without further ado, here is the interview with Colin Thompson. Welcome to another episode of Off Script with Rip. I'm your host, Ryan Ripken, and this week's guest is Colin Thompson. And Colin, first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, bro. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And so this podcast is about journeys and telling people stories. And then we're going to get into other activities, especially for you, where we have a history of we're both been involved in the professional sports world and both going into the media world. But I'm going to stop babbling here. So why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Introduce myself. This is loaded.
It was a loaded question.
Yeah, like how do I introduce my name is Colin. I was born December 15th, 1993. I was born in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and raised there, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, due north of Philadelphia. Grew up a diehard Philly sports fan, other than the Eagles, because my mom's best friend from high school was the defensive coordinator for the Steelers and the Giants, so we followed him all around the league. And I was exposed to professional sports really at a young age, and had super advanced parents with like visualization and mental strength and conditioning and positive thought. And it's been in my head, ever since those days where my mom pulled me out of school to go to the Giants parade, and all those really key moments in my younger years affected me to who I am now, of just do it, be a player, be the first player to have a podcast in the NFL, be the first player to have a media company in the NFL. Okay, great. Let's do it. That's all really from my mom. And then visualizing success with my mom and dad, and, very similar to your upbringing, being around it. Obviously, I play more than I was, but I got to see it. Played every sport in the world growing up, including ice hockey. I'm a diehard hockey fan, NHL fan, Flyers fan. And picked this football up in 6th, 7th, 8th grade and was his offensive lineman, and always wanted to play in the NFL since the day I started. And that was my dream and goal. And my parents always said, yeah, you can do it. Go do it. Go do it. We got to give you opportunities to go see it, and vision boards and all these crazy stories over the years, how they've aligned with my pro career. All the same things are on my vision board as a kid all happened in my pro career. It's pretty crazy. And long story short, that's kind of who I am. I went to a big private high school for football in my hometown and won state title, and was on one of the best teams in Pennsylvania sports history. What else? It's been a crazy.
You answered a lot, and that was putting you on the spot like that, but it was great because the beauty of this conversation, really, honestly, is for me, it feels like there's so much that when you talk about, I can relate to, and we're going to jump into the media part here in a little bit, and with Not For Long, your media company and what you've been doing so far, and but first off, just talk to me about a little bit, and I've told people being around the sport, being exposed to professional sports, at a young age, it's different. For me, I didn't understand. I understood, like, I love the sport, but I didn't understand that this was not how it normally goes. This is not the everyday experience. I mean, what were your thoughts as a young kid then? Like, did you really grasp this type of angle or perspective you were seeing?
I think again, my father had a huge impact on me with sports, massive, bringing me to every event, going to so many different things, helping with my mental focus, my toughness, my energy, charisma, leaning into my personality, letting it show through my play. But my mom visually, like I met my goal at a young age, any goal at our kitchen table was never too far. And, I think that's kind of unique where it's natural to be like, well, just keep working hard, and it's kind of like half-assed parenting.
Yeah.
Where my parents were like, no, you can play in the NFL. This is when I was like a 6, 7-year-old. And my mom's like, if you want to do it though, there's going to be certain things that you need to see and do, and you're going to have to sacrifice to do it. My dad was like the same way. So one of the stories about how, like you're saying, like the relatability side of it. So my mom pulls me out of school in 6th grade or whatever it was. She says, you need to see this giant Super Bowl parade. It's the first year they beat New England. You need to see this. You want to play in the NFL? Great. We're pulling you out of school. You're going to go watch the Giants. So we watched the Giants parade, and it was incredible. I'll never forget the ticker tape. I'll never forget Eli Manning coming by with the Super Bowl trophy. I'll never forget it. And we grew up in Philly, and the people called my mom back at the school. The principal said, this is not an acceptable reason to pull your son out of school. This is, he could get punished for this. My mom's like, I don't care. I'm pulling him out of school for this. So on my vision board, I put Jeremy Shockey, number 80 on my board. And then fast forward through my trials and tribulations of getting, pretty much released on my scholarship at Florida. I was multiple injuries, and then going to Temple and barely being able to walk at days with my feet being broken. So here I am walking in the Giants locker room. I'm a New York Football Giant, and I walk in my locker. I didn't pick my number. I wore number 86 in college, and Jeremy Shockey's number 80 is hanging in my locker. And the power of visualization, the power of walking by it every day, whatever that was, it's luck, right? But I was there every day. I saw it. So, I never was like a crazy goal for me to play in the league. I never felt crazy nervous. Actually, I have less nerves playing professional football than I did in college. So very weird in that regard, where you're playing a better talented player, more pressure. There's your livelihood's on the line. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I never felt too big. And it's allowed me now to have a clear head as a pro, and I train harder than I ever have. I feel better than I ever have. 29 years old. I feel like shit in my early 20s. Wasn't probably living right either, but I got beat up in college a lot too. So I digress. There's a lot to unpack, but yeah, the power of the mind and visualization and goal setting and being around it and giving opportunities to meet players and people has made it easier on me for sure.
Yeah, so the meeting people to be able to engage, but I think a lot of things, and I try to do this now, the mental side, and you talk about visualizing. So throughout this process, did you ever have the doubts, or it was because you were able to see it, there was always, I'm going to figure this out. Does that make sense? Because I think most people, I shouldn't say everyone, because I can't speak for everyone in this entire world, but a lot of people have doubts. A lot of people don't think that they can set their sights on their goal. So for you, did you ever have any of those moments, or just because it was so ingrained that you trusted the process?
I think a little bit of both. There's times when you're in Chicago, right? It's different perspectives too. Like, what's failure? Because I'm with the Chicago Bears. I'm on the practice squad, and I'm so jacked. So jacked. Like, literally couldn't be happier. And then past year, I had a bunch of injuries, and I was on the practice squad, and I was pissed because I wanted to play. Now I was injured, and there's some obstacles there with that. But like, I wanted, that. So that more when you get into it, when I got into the league and into pro football, because I played in different leagues, not just the NFL, then there's different levels to it there. Then you want to achieve and go up more. So yeah, of course there's doubt, but there's never was a wavering, like, what else am I going to do? And I've always created things where if I fall and the league ends today, I'll have something to fall back on: media company, coaching, business, whatever. So it's a great question, but there's always been the light at the end of the tunnel, and whatever that is, if it's gravity pulling me towards it or whatever, my work ethic's never wavered. Discipline at times, sure, I'll have a little more fun this time of year, that time of year, or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, my mind's constantly on it. Everything I do, when I lay my head on the pillow, not brought down by it, but It's all I think about, really, if you really think about what's going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just funny hearing the perspective of a true, athlete in that sense where but it's for everything, but I think that some people when we get caught up with it's a game, we're doing this shit for fun and like yes, you do it. Yes, it's fun, but you do it because you love it, but you do it also it's as you get older, people realize it's a business and how you go about your business moving forward is going to dictate some guys you're going to reach your potential, right? That's going to happen. But the amount of effort you put in, the focus on it, the drive of it has to be there. And that's not just with, I mean, what you're telling me is here that drive is not just if it doesn't work for football, it's driving you then, which you've already had success. But that drive is what's going to take you to the next step, which in this case for you is at the same time, starting your own media company, starting your own media journey during this process.
Yeah, and I think too when you say it's a kids game, and yeah, that's all for all the players that calm themselves down and the coaches. But at the end of the day, like it's not a kids game when you invest the amount of time you invest into it, and you
Hell
make
no.
and you miss your kid's birthday party, and you miss, you know, kids being born. You miss funerals. I missed plenty of funerals, which has been hard. I've missed weddings. I'm in the wedding, missed it. And I value that. Depends what you value. Some people must say that's no big deal. I would do that to play in the NFL. Well, yeah, it's easy for you to say, but when your best friends are getting married and it's right in the middle of your season, that's hard. It's hard on you emotionally. Um, so but that's a part of the sacrifice of doing it. So I have no issue with it, and I don't have a problem. People to have their wedding, like it's still a big deal. But when you sacrifice what you sacrifice, how your body feels every morning, the amount of money it takes to become a professional, and then once you are a professional, what you need to invest back into your body and your mind, it's a commitment. It's more than you can even imagine, especially if you're going to load your plate up. Again, like someone like me, I'm a media company. I meet an hour a day pretty much on phone call with a high school football coach to help them with their program. So for me, that's what makes me go. But the older you get and you have kids and responsibilities and you got to cut the lawn and things like that, those things fade away. So, to answer your question, it's a game, but it's more than that because your whole family, including you, have sacrificed a ton to help you get there.
Yeah, it's life decisions. I look back and when my dad played, I looked at it as and the only time I'd see him if during the season is if I went to after the game and was in the clubhouse or he had a day game or an off day. And again, we're around if we're not in school and things are happening. But then I thought some days the only time I'd see him is if he got up after a 2-week road trip and got home at 4 a.m. and would take me to school at, whatever, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it may be. And I looked back at that and I'm like, oh, that can't be that bad. And then you get in it. And then you're in it and you're like, holy shirts and pants, like this sucks. Like I've had bus trips and you've had trips and you're going, man, I truly get it now.
When you land from now in college, I have two of those just on the side note. Now, yours on a serious note about the impact of your time with your father. But on a funny note, we played Houston. We landed at 7 a.m. They wouldn't open the gates for us to pull into the private section of the airport for us to fly out. Whatever reason, the person fell asleep or didn't show up to work. So we sat outside the gate for 2 hours before we boarded the plane. So we landed at like 7 a.m. We got back to our dorm. I had class at 9 in the morning. Guys took 30-minute nap. We landed. People were walking to class when we were coming through. We were in rush hour traffic in Philly when we were driving. That was a nightmare. And then also we played Seattle. Like that's a side note too. These NFL teams, people don't understand. If you're a good NFL team, you play primetime games. Those 8 o'clock games, what do you think the away teams get home? Rough. And then you got to go do it the next week because you're prime time. You're playing Thursday night. You're playing Sunday night football, Monday night football. It's one thing for us in Carolina where we hit all these 1 o'clockers. No problem. You're home by 5 o'clock. If you're away, you're home by 9 o'clock. But if you're playing for the Packers, you're playing for the Steelers, Ravens, Patriots, Eagles, you bet your bottom dollar you're playing prime time. So that's a side note. But also you talk about traveling with your dad. My dad owned a small telecom company and he sold it talk about impact. He sold it, I don't know, probably my freshman year, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And he drove me to school every day because I would take the bus. And the bus, since we were 15, 20 minutes from school, the bus would be the first pickup and the last drop off. Right. So I would be up like 5 a.m., like getting no sleep. And my dad was like big on sleep and eating and all that stuff, is huge on it to help you grow, etc. Because I always wanted to be big, right? My dad's 6'7", so he's like, "You're not going to be big, son, unless you sleep." Um, so I'd go to bed or whatever, and I'm off the rails per usual. But I remember with my dad, he would drive me to school, and every morning we would listen to Mike and Mike in the morning, and that was huge for my development and passion for radio. Because really, right, always trying to say, the boys always are trying to impress their fathers, right? Like I tell my dad, and my dad would be like, "This is really good radio. Listen to how they articulate. Listen to how they make their points. Listen to how they talk to guests. Listen to how they interact between each other. What's good radio?" So I fell in love with it. And from that moment on, I was like, I think I can do this. So I would always join radio shows, and I would always join, podcasts, and had the opportunity to start mine in the media company. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So it all started really from like that moment with my dad in the car.
And again, for any parents or people that listen to that, those moments, you might think, or for kids, these moments are insignificant. Like that shit hits. That you don't know what's going to spark for someone that could really change a whole outlook. But then switching into it, because I want to talk then about your media company and Not For Long Media. You have a variety of different podcasts. You have your own specific one as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you started all this, you mentioned it earlier, but you started all this while you're still chasing your professional career and your dream there. So, in a small sense, like walk through how that's been, and how, talk about being busy. Just talk about a little bit to everyone else about getting started with it, and now how you feel where you're at currently, and I'll ask you another question after that.
Yeah. So the media company was born because, of course, it was a podcast before, Not For Long podcast, and it was wordy. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, everything's McAfee show, this guy's show, that guy's show. It needs to be my name, right? I want to be branding. I am a player. At the time, I was not a player in the NFL. I was with the Giants. I got cut. Then I joined the Bears, and the podcast was kind of born between that because I was calling games on the radio for Temple football for a Philly radio station. I traveled with Temple football team. So I was doing Temple Owl podcasts, and people would have like mics and shit. I'm like, oh, that's cool. What are you doing, a podcast? They're like, yeah, you should do it. I'm like, I think mine's gonna be better than this. So let me start a podcast. So I started a podcast, and kind of the rest is history. Just put a Yeti mic up and put it for the room. This is easy. Download it on my thing. No video at the time. Just like people calling in, putting my phone up right next to the thing when someone would talk, and have it be FaceTime audio because it was clearer than a phone call. So that's kind of how it started. And then eventually I would have guests on, and like those guests would be like, man, I want to start a show. And I'm like, well, I think we could do that in my media company. I think I could front some money and start putting some people behind it, and then try to get sponsorship. So boom, we did it. Brian O'Grady called, who for some people that are baseball fans on here may know Brian, played a handful of years in the MLB. Then now has played overseas the last couple of years. Great player, from my hometown, from my home high school, I should say, not from the same hometown, but went to high school together. Brian was older than me, and he's like, "Hey man, I want to start a show with you. Let's do it." So we started a show called Breaking Bats. I'm wearing the hats now. Your host of this show, Mr. Ripken, he was also a host on Breaking Bats as well, and he's a friend of the show and is on all the time. So it's a fun baseball show. So essentially, that's how it started, with Breaking Bats and my show, and then we have a military show called Brought to Light. We have a football show that's all girls called Two Girls, One League. Paige Aldave is the host of that. For all the Marylanders listening out there, the Aldave girls, Paige, one of the daughters who played lacrosse with my wife at Florida, she's a host of that. We have a NFL coach's daughter who's a host on that show as well. So we have Colin Thompson show, Breaking Bats, Brought to Light, a new military show. We have the Sam Boner show, which if anybody follows me on Instagram, and me screaming, eating about sandwiches and all, these guys, the Sam Boners, are hysterical. Check them out. A legendary group. We have OGs with Harry Mays and Jason Bertitas, who do just a killer job with us. And they're two like kind of grumpy Philly old media guys. And then I got to pull it up here to make sure I read off the whole list on my phone, because it's going to bother me if I don't. But there's a lot of them now, so I lose
You got a ton. I mean, I think that's the part of it. I was aware of all the ones that you just talked about, and I can't believe that you now have expanded this many.
Yeah, and then Showtime Speaks, which is by Rasheed Bailey, who's a CFL receiver, who's a motivational speaker, who's tremendous and a friend of mine. So, yeah, man, it's been a grind. It's been fun. It's been a learning experience for me. Payroll, taxes, business, you know, supporting people with microphones and trying to make sure we can afford it, and sponsorships, and trying to grow it that way. And then also like get some fun people in here. And you got to hire people, you got to fire people. Like it's been a great learning process for me. Everything's been a learning lesson. And I'm way better at running a media company now than I was yesterday. That's for sure.
So for people starting off with this, because coming from someone, hi, I'm a person starting off with this, it was daunting, and it still is daunting from the sense of, what the hell am I doing? I want to try to make the production right, but then I get so tight or I get so stressed that maybe I push back doing production. You push back doing it. So what would be something for you that to remind people, for anyone else out there that wants to get going with this, what would be your advice on these first steps? Because that was something I struggled with.
Reps, grip it and rip it. That's how I firmly believe, is like, hey, it's not going to be perfect. No one's perfect listening to this thing in their car, driving to work to DC today. Get on there, be yourself. Because if you be yourself, I always say no prep. I do zero prep for every one of my shows. Because now, listen, I say that tongue in cheek. Yes, if there's a segment, or yes, if we're talking about something or we're rating something, I do prep. But if you do what you're passionate about, you have no prep. If I need to talk about gardening, because I'm looking at my yard here that I have to take care of today, I need reps at it. I really can't talk about it. But if I could talk about football, if I could talk about food, talk about the Philadelphia Flyers, the NHL, let's see, what else? Building a bar. I'm sitting in my bar right now, like drinking a beer. I could talk about all those things. And they're in my wheelhouse, and I don't need to put any effort into it. So that's my biggest encouragement for people getting started, is like, what are you passionate about? Because then you'll never have to work. Like, Ryan doesn't need to do any prep for this show today with me. We're friends. It's easy. It aligns. And that's a part of the gifts that we were given playing pro sports, is you get to be around people that have made it in pro sports. We're not above anybody else, but you have these conversations and people follow us, and that's a value and a currency of the world today. So it's a win-win for both of us. So my biggest advice would be to grip and rip it. And you're going to make mistakes. It's no different than anything in the world. You just got to go and you got to attack it, and you're going to learn and you're going to adapt and find some good people to help you do it along the way, because our team in Not For Long Media is awesome, and they've helped me a ton. Without them, we have no media company.
Yeah, I mean, it's the people around you, the collection that you're eventually going to have that's going to make everything work. But I'm with you. The only reason I want someone else to say it besides me, because I would be so technical. I'd literally sit at my computer and look at, well, nope, I messed up here. I got to redo it. I got to redo it. And I'm driving myself insane. And I don't understand why. And then I'd do the video and I'd still think it looks like shit. And when you look back at it, you can see the progression of when you get better. I can look at one of my first videos and went like, woof, that was rough, but you're not going to learn it unless, like you said, grip it and rip it. And that's a baseball term right there. I love it. I guess you can use it for a lot of terms, but
golf,
baseball guy, golf, except golf, when I grip it and rip it too much,
it's a brand problem.
Yeah. Your boy might be putting one if we're near a place where there's a house. I have a terrible slice. It might be at the house. This way. Is that you? Anyway,
I'm a lefty.
Hey, me too. Gosh, that'd be fun. We should get on the links. That could be something as well. Get on the links, see how it is. I'll tell you what's not professional about things that I've done is my golf game. So
Me too. Perfect. It's horrendous.
So we have a date there.
It's definitely evolved.
Yeah. I mean, but even for that, it takes reps. To get better at going to play golf, even though we're joking about it, takes reps. Media, getting in front of a camera, it takes reps. So kind of as we're getting close to wrapping up here a little bit, your media moving on, you want to keep chasing your dream, obviously with playing, and we talked about it. You're waiting around, but just explain to people, I'm a guy that just came out of, I officially moved on from playing. And it's hard to transition for me. Yeah, have you felt at all that even though you're doing this, that you, I don't know, it's not that you're still involved in both things, but do you feel yourself having your focus on something else rather than what you've been doing for years? Has that transition been smooth? Has it been up and down? Has it? I don't even know other words to describe it, so I'm just going to ramble for a second. But yeah, what's that been like for you?
I think what keeps me going, to answer the question of what's it been like, is I strained my calf August 8th last year, and I played through it for a week on really half a leg. Contusion turned into a strained calf, which ended up being a hell for the next 3 months of why is this thing not going to work? Which was hard because I haven't really been injured since, 2012, 2013. It's a long time ago. And that's big for football. That's hard. So that was a really hard time where I'm in my peak and I got hurt. But before I got hurt, those 2 weeks of training camp, I was playing the best football of my life. So that's what keeps me going. If I was just being pedestrian, getting by, not making impact plays, but I've gotten better every year. And I don't know if everybody can say that honestly, but here's why I can say it honestly is my college year was trash. Like I was number one tight end in the country, and then I fell from literally the clouds to the ground. I went from 30 offers to 2 years later, not one team wanted me. Not even a year and a, not whatever, 15 months later. So I had a meteoric drop, and then I had to build myself back up. That was the first real adversity I faced in my life. And I had to build myself back up from the ground up. So I've gotten healthier every year. There's off season. There's two years in a row where I couldn't even run or lift lower body. So I've overcome some mountains to get where I am, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm making more plays than I ever have when I was healthy. Even this year when I was on like a wheel and a half, I was, making splash plays, and that's really not who I am. So I've improved as a player, and that's what keeps me going. And it's easy in a way because you're working on your physical health. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get bigger, stronger, faster, leaner, eat better. Allows me to have a little bit more fun too. A couple beers, some food, So it's not the worst thing. And it aligns with what I'm talking about on here. So that's the nice thing about what I talked about, creating a cast net where you can land safely on your back when you're done playing is I think I'll just pick this up. Who knows what I'm going to do? I haven't really made the decision yet, and I don't plan on making it. I plan on grinding, whether I get picked up by a team, probably all the way through next off season too. So I'm playing the long game, and I know everyone can't do that, but for me, I was playing my best ball, so I don't really find it practical to walk away from that.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. And I think if you still have and you believe you can, why would you give it up? Because there's an expiration date on playing. It's not going to be something in 5 years where you go, hey, you know what? I'm going to go play. I'm ready now. You take the moment as it comes, and as soon as you make the decision or the opportunities are gone from you, one or the other, it's over. It's done. It's not a do-over. But it's interesting. The whole time you're speaking about how hard things were, how unexpected, I guess, your college career went. I think for everyone, that's not just football. If you guys listen to that is not football that he's talking about. And that shows you people are going to love you. People are going to have all these things. Shit hits the fan. And when shit hits the fan and you have to pick yourself back up, how you pick yourself back up is what you do with your actions, not just your words. And for you, you did that. So I wanted to emphasize that. I'm sure people would read between the lines, but I just thought that was really cool.
There's some dark moments, man. I mean, dark. Florida comes up to you and the doctors say, hey, listen, we think you should never play football again. Your career is over. We want you to be able to run around with your kids in the yard and coach them in sports. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you got a navicular stress fracture, what Joel Embiid had on your left foot. It's highly controversial whether to get surgery or not. I mean, shout out to Joel Embiid too. Like, that guy's injury to becoming the MVP of the league, he should be it every year. But I digress. As a Philly fan, but my point is, there are some rough moments, and then really for me, social. Whether people think it's wrong, but it's who I am. Like, the social side of football is what I love. I love to play. Don't get me wrong. Like that's the easy part, being physical and doing my job and figuring out the puzzle. But what makes it football fun is playing great and then the social side of it combined because you practice way more than you play, unlike baseball where you play way more than you practice. So, yeah, for me, like there was some really dark moments there. I just met my wife at the time 10 years ago, and and I'm ready to transfer 6 months later. And then I'm in Temple in North Philly. I'm hearing gunshots at night while my wife's in Gainesville with friend of the show, Mary Sean Wilcox, and
Yeah.
all these girls running around palm trees, and Gators are getting ready to play Tennessee, and I'm getting ready to play Tulsa in a hailstorm in Philly, and you're like, what am
What am
I
I doing here?
doing here? And so like, boom, it just happened like that. Where in my mind, I'm like, great, I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to be a 3rd round pick. We're going to win the SC title. Where I was like, nope, none of that happened. So, yeah, I mean, that's a normal life's like that, right? But it's magnified, and a lot of people know about it, and you can't just kind of hide and go to your deal. So it's been a great journey. It's maybe who I am today, and I have a lot left to learn too. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It's funny bringing up that is I heard about you through them, by the way,
Yeah.
through your wife and through Mary Sean,
Mhm.
because I'd be coming down to spring training and stop. And that was right when you left. So I heard about you before. So it was, it's just cool coming full circle. Well, Colin, that's all I got for you to now. I just wanted to give a face to the name, because we're going to have some more things upcoming that I'll be glad to share with people moving forward.
Maybe some golf, some food.
Golf, food. We just were talking about off that. And I think we're going to find a way to get that done. I just have a sneaky feeling. So for everyone, stay tuned. A lot more coming. But Colin, can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on. And that will do it for this episode. That will do it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Colin Thompson. And as always, if you guys can please like, subscribe, review the podcast, it just would help me make the whole experience better for you. And that is my ultimate goal. So that does it for this week. I will see you the following week for another episode of Off Script with Rip.